Society rewards mediocrity, Nietzsche's most brutal truth. Have you ever wondered why the world applauds the average but punishes the exceptional? Why the compliant rise, but the original are ignored or destroyed? Nietzsche saw it long before we did. Society is not designed to elevate greatness. It's designed to protect itself from it. And in doing so, it rewards mediocrity like a virtue. The quiet, the safe, the unthreatening, these are the ones who get promoted, praised, preserved. Not because they are wise, but because they never disturb the system. But the ones who think differently, speak boldly, live fiercely, they are silenced, mocked, or exiled. Nietzsche called this the revolt of the mediocre, the secret war against the strong. This is episode 5 in our 7-part Nietzschean rebellion. And in this chapter, we tear the mask off the system that fears your fire and exalts your obedience. Like, subscribe, and activate the bell, because once you see how deep this betrayal runs, mediocrity will never feel safe again. Brutal truth 1: the world doesn't want you to be great. It wants you to behave. From the moment you enter this world, you're taught how to fit in, not how to become. You're praised for being polite, not passionate. Rewarded for being predictable, not powerful. Nietzsche saw this with brutal clarity. The world does not fear failure, it fears greatness. Because greatness cannot be controlled. The strong, the visionary, the original, these people don't follow the script. They create their own. And that makes them dangerous. Not because they harm the world, but because they expose it. They reveal the mediocrity everyone else agreed to wear like a second skin. And so, instead of being celebrated, they are shamed. Not for doing wrong, but for daring to be real. Society says it loves authenticity, but what it really wants is safety. And there is nothing safe about someone who refuses to shrink. Someone who speaks without permission, lives without apology, and creates without compromise. These are the people Nietzsche championed. Not because they were perfect, but because they were unapologetically alive. The world isn't designed to elevate the exceptional, it's designed to tolerate them at best and erase them at worst. Why? Because exceptional people make everyone else uncomfortable. They force reflection. They challenge complacency. And in a society addicted to comfort, that kind of reflection is treated like violence. You see it everywhere. The loudest applause goes to the safe, the polished, the filtered. But real greatness? It disturbs. It's raw. It demands confrontation, not only with the world, but with yourself. And most people will do anything to avoid that. Nietzsche didn't just observe this, he lived it. His genius was rejected in his lifetime. His books misunderstood. His soul ridiculed. Not because he lacked truth, but because he had too much of it. And the world wasn't ready to face itself in the mirror he held up. But here's the question. Do you want to be accepted or do you want to be awake? Because you can't have both. The price of greatness is misunderstanding. And Nietzsche would say, pay it gladly. Because what you gain is not approval, but freedom. You were not born to be digestible. You were born to disrupt, to stir, to shake loose the lies others live in. And if that makes you a threat, so be it. Nietzsche never wanted you to be comfortable. He wanted you to be true. So comment below, when have you been punished for showing your power? And what part of your greatness are you still hiding just to be accepted? Brutal truth 2: mediocrity is a system, and you're being trained to obey it. Mediocrity isn't a personal failure, it's a program, a cultural software installed from birth. It teaches you to aim low, settle early, and never question the rules. Nietzsche saw this not as coincidence, but as design. A society that fears the wild soul must build a system that keeps the wild asleep. From childhood, you're rewarded not for thinking, but for repeating. Not for asking why, but for raising your hand at the right time. School becomes obedience training. Work becomes submission in a suit. And the result? A population that calls it success, to fit a mold that was never built for their soul. But Nietzsche wasn't fooled. He saw mediocrity as violence against the self, not a neutral state but a state of spiritual collapse, a slow death wrapped in praise. When you stop striving, questioning, creating, you become manageable, predictable, and the system loves that. Mediocrity feels safe because it protects you from risk, from failure, from rejection, but it also protects you from your potential. And Nietzsche's warning is clear. The longer you stay safe, the more your soul forgets how to burn. You start to believe the lie, that being average is being mature, that fitting in is being wise, that ambition is arrogance, that fire is dangerous, and slowly, without knowing it, you trade your life for approval, your greatness for comfort. Nietzsche called this the sickness of the herd, when people no longer live, but function. When they no longer ask what they're here to do, they just perform. Smile. Numb. Repeat. But deep inside, something still aches. That ache? That's your real self screaming beneath the mediocrity you were told to wear. So how do you break free? You begin by seeing it, by naming it, by daring to say, "This is not enough for me." You stop asking how to fit in and start asking what you were actually born to create. You stop following and begin forging. Let's talk about it. Where have you been trained to settle? And what truth inside you is still waiting to rise? Brutal Truth 3: Why the system protects the average and silences the exceptional. Nietzsche believed that mediocrity doesn't just survive in society. It rules. Not because it's better, but because it's safer. The average person doesn't threaten the system. They maintain it. They obey. They don't create waves, they carry buckets. And in a world obsessed with order, that's what gets rewarded. The exceptional, on the other hand, are chaos incarnate. They challenge. They expose. They build without asking permission. And because of that, they must be silenced. Not with violence, but with invisibility. Their ideas are ignored. Their voices drowned in noise. Their presence made uncomfortable. You've seen it. The teacher who told you to tone it down. The boss who warned you not to overstep. The friends who distanced themselves when you grew too fast, too deep, too wild. That wasn't about you. That was about them. About the fear of being seen as less. About the terror of being called to rise. Nietzsche saw this fear not as personal, but as systemic. A culture built to protect itself from transformation must protect itself from the transformer. And that's you. Every time you speak your truth, create without asking, shine without shrinking, you become a threat to the mediocre equilibrium. So the system doesn't need to attack you. It just ignores you, starves you, labels you too much. But Nietzsche's truth is this: if you're being silenced, it's probably because your voice matters. Not to the herd, but to the future. The price of being exceptional isn't rejection. It's resistance. But that resistance is proof that you're not just playing the game, you're changing it. And the game hates to be changed. So here's the question: what part of you have you silenced because it made others uncomfortable? And what would happen if you stopped waiting for permission to shine? Brutal Truth 4: The death of ambition is the birth of control. Ambition used to be sacred, the divine hunger to rise, to build, to express something eternal through the fire of your own life. But society has learned how to poison it. Nietzsche saw this clearly. When a culture can no longer rise, it starts to call climbing a sin. You've heard it: be humble. Don't be too proud. Success will corrupt you. These aren't spiritual insights. These are cultural sedatives, designed not to free you, but to flatten you. Because a person with ambition is a person with power. And power, unless controlled, becomes dangerous to the status quo. The death of ambition isn't enlightenment, it's engineering. A system that teaches you to fear your own drive is a system that wants to use your energy for its own end. Work hard, but only for the company. Sacrifice, but only for the collective. Dream, but never too big. Rise, but not too far above the others. Nietzsche believed that ambition is the soul remembering itself. That when you feel that deep, burning restlessness, that hunger, it's not ego. It's truth. It's life saying, there is more to you than this shell you were told to fit into. But here's the trap. If you don't honor that ambition, it turns into bitterness, into self-doubt, into quiet, gnawing despair. You know you were meant for more, but you've buried it under politeness, under fear of judgment, under the lie that wanting more makes you bad. It doesn't. It makes you awake. So dig it up, dust it off, and let that fire rise again. Not for applause, not for status, but because your soul deserves to stretch. And if the system tells you to shrink, burn the system. Now tell me, what dream have you been told is too much? And are you ready to let that lie die? Brutal Truth 5. How modern morality keeps you small. Modern morality tells you to be kind, humble, selfless. But Nietzsche saw through the surface. He believed that most of what society calls moral is simply what keeps you harmless. Harmless people don't rebel. Harmless people don't build. Harmless people don't threaten the machine, and so they are called good. But this morality isn't about virtue. It's about safety. Not your safety, the system's. You're praised when you stay in line, when you sacrifice without protest, when you call your own silence a blessing. That's not goodness. That's suppression in disguise. The most dangerous morality is the one that trains you to applaud your own submission, to believe that your smallness is noble, that your fire is sin, that your voice is arrogance, and so you shrink, for the approval of people who have never even dared to live. Nietzsche believed in a different morality, one rooted in strength, not guilt, in creation, not control. He saw the old codes as chains, made to bind the exceptional and glorify the average, and he urged us to break them, even if it meant walking alone. Because the truth is, moral approval often comes at the cost of your soul, and what the world calls selflessness often means self-erasure. But you weren't born to vanish. You were born to ignite. And if that makes you dangerous, Nietzsche would say, good. So now ask yourself, what part of your goodness is actually just fear of being seen? And what would happen if you stopped trying to be acceptable and started being real? Brutal Truth 6. The masses fear the one who doesn't need them. You've felt it, that moment when you say what's true and the room grows cold. When you stop explaining yourself and people pull away. When you walk your own path and suddenly you're alone. Nietzsche knew this was inevitable. Because society doesn't just hate greatness, it fears independence. Why? Because an independent soul can't be controlled, can't be manipulated with shame, can't be seduced with fake rewards. When you no longer need the herd begins to resent you. You've broken the unspoken contract. Stay like us or we'll turn on you. This is why many people don't rise. Not because they lack vision, but because they fear exile. They fear being called arrogant, cold, selfish. But Nietzsche would ask, isn't it more arrogant to stay small just to make others feel comfortable? When you become independent, you begin to carry a different frequency, one that unsettles those still living in dependence. They feel it, and instead of asking how to rise, they'll ask, who do you think you are? That's not a question. That's a warning. Don't outgrow us. But Nietzsche's answer is clear. Outgrow anyway. Because only when you stop needing the herd can you finally hear your own soul. Only when you stop begging for belonging can you become whole. And that wholeness, that sovereignty, is what they're really afraid of. So don't apologize for it. Don't tone it down. Don't shrink to fit their comfort zone. You are not here to prove yourself to the many. You are here to become one. Unified, untamed, unshakable. Now speak it. Where have you held yourself back just to remain part of the crowd? Brutal Truth 7. You were not born to fit in, you were born to rise. Nietzsche didn't believe that greatness was reserved for the elite. He believed it was possible for anyone, but only if they were willing to suffer for it. Because rising above mediocrity is not a gift. It's a war. A war against comfort, against programming, against the gravity of the herd. You were not born to be a consumer of life. You were born to shape it. Not to blend in, but to stand out. Not to obey, but to create. But that path comes at a cost. You'll be misunderstood, resisted, and rejected. And Nietzsche knew most people won't pay that price. So they settle, smile, shrink. But you felt the ache, the restlessness, the knowledge that the life you were handed is too small for your soul. And that means you're already different, already dangerous, already on the path Nietzsche called the way of the overman. The one who doesn't just survive the world, he rebuilds it. You don't need permission to rise. You don't need the crowd to clap. You only need the courage to step into the fire of your own becoming. And once you do, mediocrity will no longer seduce you, it will sicken you. Because when you taste even one drop of your real power, you'll never settle for average again. You'll become allergic to small talk, fake smiles, and shallow approval. You'll want depth, fire, truth, and that want will make you unstoppable. So don't wait, don't dim, don't delay your rise for a world that fears your shine. Greatness isn't given, it's forged, and the forge is waiting. Let me ask you, what would your life look like if you stopped shrinking and decided to rise? Mediocrity is the lie that keeps you safe and dead inside. Now you see it. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as intended, to keep you tame, small, manageable. Mediocrity is not a passive state, it's a prison, one that rewards silence and punishes fire, one that praises obedience and crucifies originality. And Nietzsche's most brutal truth? Most people will never escape it because they don't want to. But you're not most people. You've felt the hunger, the revolt, the ache of knowing you were meant for something more than the quiet approval of the mediocre. This episode wasn't a lecture, it was a mirror, and what you saw staring back was not your weakness, but your sleeping greatness. In the next episode, God is dead, now what? Nietzsche reveals how to survive without faith. We go even deeper. When everything you've believed collapses, when the sky goes silent, what do you build in the void? Like, subscribe, hit the bell, and send this to someone who still thinks comfort is safety. The age of mediocrity is ending. And you were born to rise above it.